On the southern boulevard of Chicago, where buses always ran behind schedule, cracked sidewalks overflowed with trash, and police sirens howled like church bells every morning, Malik grew up among what people called failure. His apartment complex had no fences, only crooked doors and peeling paint from another decade. At night, the streetlights flickered like they were dying, and during the day, the sun rarely reached past the leaning buildings that seemed to buckle from exhaustion. Malik lived with his mother and older brother in a rundown two-bedroom apartment on the third floor. Every time it rained, water dripped through the ceiling like a weary ticking clock counting down something no one could name. His mother, Loretta, worked at a nearby laundromat from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., then picked up extra cleaning shifts. She had no health insurance, no paid holidays, and never once complained. Malik's father left when he was 7. One day, he said he was going to buy milk and never came back, leaving behind an empty refrigerator and a pile of unpaid bills. Malik never asked about him again. In his heart, the man had become a void, not hatred, just an unnamed emptiness. Malik's older brother, Jamal, was 5 years older. Once praised for his talent in math, Jamal's teenage years brought more than textbooks. Gangs, cigarettes, a gun tucked in his backpack, and long nights out that turned into police reports. Malik often heard his mother cry in the kitchen whenever Jamal was hauled into the station. Yet every morning she still washed the dishes, wiped the counters, and left for work like nothing had happened. Malik was different. He loved books, especially old ones. Coverless novels, broken-spined science books, torn-up textbooks salvaged from the junk bookstore by the landfill. Once, he found a filthy high school biology book. He wiped it clean with tissues, flattened its pages, and read it like scripture. He didn't understand everything, but he loved the diagrams. Human anatomy, the lungs, the heart, the structure of cells. One day, he scribbled in his notebook, "I want to become a doctor. I want to heal my mom." But in a place like this, dreams were luxuries. His school, Roosevelt Elementary, was a crumbling building with tall iron fences and metal detectors at the front door. Teachers came and went. The curriculum was outdated. Most of the time, students stared out the windows where cops chased addicts along the sidewalks. Malik was smart, but he knew being smart wasn't enough. He couldn't afford tutoring, didn't own a computer for online assignments, had no one to guide him. Still, every morning when his mother handed him a small lunchbox and said, "Have a good day," he found a reason to keep going. The day his mother collapsed at work, Malik was in class. An ambulance was called, and the hospital kept her overnight for blood pressure tests. That evening, Malik sat beside her bed. She was asleep, IV tube dripping slowly, her face sunken, hands worn and calloused. He sat there for a long time without crying. When the doctor arrived, Malik listened intently, soaking up every word. "Doctor," he whispered at last, "how do you know where a heart hurts?" The doctor looked at him, a small, wiry black boy with eyes burning like winter fire, and smiled. No one answered that question right then. But perhaps in that moment, Malik had already found his path. A road lined with more red lights than green, but one he knew. As long as he kept walking, there would be light at the end. Malik entered middle school with a torn-strap backpack and hand-me-down sneakers from his brother. The neighborhood school, where most kids received free breakfast, looked nothing like what he had seen on TV. There were no lively sports teams, no marching band, no debate club or science fair. Just broken desks, overcrowded classrooms, and the shouting voices of kids and teachers echoing through recess. Each school day was a test. Some mornings, Malik had to step around teens smoking weed by the gate. Other days, he ran as fights erupted in the hallways. Once, a student was caught with a knife, and the entire school went into lockdown. Malik learned that to stay safe here, you had to stay quiet, keep your head down, and blend in. The teachers were exhausted. Some forgot students' names, others barely graded papers, but Malik still studied, scribbling notes, asking questions, looking up words in a worn-out dictionary. In an essay assignment titled "A Person Who Inspires You," he wrote about the doctor who treated his mother. He got a C. The teacher wrote, "Unrealistic. You should choose a family member." Malik didn't protest. He quietly folded the paper, slipped it into his backpack, and kept studying. Dreams didn't need approval, they just needed to be held tight. Temptation was everywhere. His classmates started doing runs, delivering packages or keeping watch for neighborhood dealers, earning $20 a job. One of Malik's closest friends, Andre, invited him in. "Easy money," Andre said. 15 minutes, and you can get new shoes." Malik hesitated. His shoes had holes. His mother coughed all night. There were only 2 apples in the fridge, and the school printer had been broken all week, leaving his assignments unfinished. He said yes. The first time, he just stood on the corner pretending to play on his phone. The second time, he passed a small paper bag to a stranger. The third time, he was caught. Undercover cops had been watching. They cuffed him in public. At the station, officers asked if he knew what he was carrying. Malik said nothing. He didn't cry. He didn't plead. When his mother arrived, she didn't yell. She just looked at him for a long time, then held him tight. On the way home, she gave him an old notebook with a worn-out cover. It was her journal from when she was young, a record of her dreams to become a nurse. "My dream didn't make it," she said, "but yours still can." That night, Malik burned the paper bag in the trash bin. He made himself a promise. He would never walk that path again. When Malik turned 15, his mother began coughing up blood. At first, it was just a dry morning cough. Malik thought it was winter flu, but then she started losing sleep, dropping weight, growing dizzy while cooking. She refused to see a doctor, no insurance, no time off. "As long as I can still stand," she said, "I can still work." Malik watched her fade, day by day. He began picking up jobs after school, dishwashing at a diner, mowing lawns, scrubbing floors on weekends. Some nights his legs hurt so badly he couldn't stand, but the fridge stayed fuller, and his mother's cough medicine no longer came from a dollar store. While classmates talked about video games, crushes, and birthday parties, Malik studied SAT vocabulary. He copied words from a tattered prep book, taped definitions on the wall, recited them while brushing his teeth or stirring rice. He'd never seen anyone like him become a doctor outside of TV, but that didn't stop him from believing. The night before the scholarship exam, his mother collapsed in the bathroom. He called 911, rode in the ambulance, and sat alone all night in the ER. The doctor said it was advanced tuberculosis, untreated for too long. Malik still took the test the next morning, eyes bloodshot from no sleep. He wrote with shaking hands and an empty stomach. When results came in, he hadn't made the cutoff. Without the money, college became a shut door. He stood outside the library watching strangers pass, holding his torn score report. For the first time in years, Malik felt small and powerless. Then the worst came. His mother didn't make it. Her funeral was quiet, attended only by a few old neighbors and one of his former teachers. Malik stood by the grave, worn sneakers soaked in morning dew, clutching her old notebook. Inside were unfinished pages. "Nursing exam tomorrow. Must review respiratory system." He didn't cry, not because he was strong, but because grief had hollowed him out. Jamal didn't come. He was in juvenile detention for gun possession. Malik stood alone, wind sweeping the cemetery, and for the first time truly felt orphaned, not just by death, but by the burial of his dream. Then, weeks later, a letter arrived. He had been invited to a second scholarship interview. His former teacher had written an appeal to the board. The reason listed was brief. Exceptional hardship, extraordinary effort. That was the first time Malik believed. You could fall, and fall hard. But if you got up, even just once, you could still move forward. Malik wore the only decent shirt he had for the interview. He walked nearly 30 minutes to the bus stop, then took 2 transfers to reach the scholarship office downtown, where everything was polished, quiet, and unnervingly perfect. They asked him about his goals, his motivation, why he hadn't given up. He hadn't rehearsed a speech. He just told the truth, about his mother, about old books, about nights sleeping in hospital chairs, and a small promise he carried inside, that one day he would be the one holding the stethoscope. 3 weeks later, a blue envelope arrived, a full 4-year scholarship, including housing and books. Malik cried. Not loudly, just tears falling uncontrollably. He thought of his mother, the tiny kitchen, and the worn notebook he now carried everywhere like a relic passed down through generations. The first college Malik ever stepped into had wide green lawns and a sparkling dining hall like something out of a movie, but the dream wasn't as glossy up close. Malik quickly realized how different he was. His skin, his accent, the way he walked, the clothes he wore. His roommate didn't know how to talk to him. Other students wore university hoodies. Malik had 2 plain t-shirts with no logos. The coursework was full of jargon. The professors spoke fast, like no one needed to take notes. Once Malik fell asleep in the library after an overnight shift at the dining hall. A security guard woke him up thinking he was homeless. Moments like that made him wonder, did he really belong here? But he kept studying, taking notes line by line, borrowing extra textbooks, volunteering unpaid at a nearby community clinic, the one where the doctor who treated his mother used to work. That doctor had retired, but the nurses still remembered Loretta. One of them even saved a thank you card she'd once written. When they handed the card to Malik, he stood silent for a long time. On the front was her handwriting, "Thank you, doctor, for saving me, so I can stay alive for my 2 children." For the first time, Malik wasn't just studying to rise above. He was studying to keep a promise, studying to continue someone else's dream. 4 years of college passed like seasons of unrelenting rain. Malik had no spring break trips, no fancy graduation party, no cap-and-gown photos by a shiny car. But he had knowledge. He had belief. And he still carried a promise that never faded. He applied for a residency program in the very city where he grew up, among police sirens and flickering streetlights. When the acceptance letter came, he didn't celebrate. He simply stood in front of the old apartment he once shared with his mother and stared in silence. Malik became the first resident doctor from his neighborhood. His white coat bore his name in neat embroidery, but his heart was still the heart of the boy who once stood on a street corner holding a paper bag, now choosing to heal instead of harm. He opened a small community clinic in the old neighborhood, near the playground where his brother used to play. The clinic wasn't fancy, but it was clean, with shelves of free health pamphlets. He treated the uninsured, the undocumented, the unseen, because once he had been one of them. One day, a 12-year-old boy came in with strep throat, small, shy, unable to make eye contact. Malik discovered the boy liked drawing. He printed out human anatomy coloring sheets for him and secretly slipped a few new colored pencils into his backpack. On his way out, the boy turned back and said, "I want to be a doctor, like you." Malik smiled. He didn't say a word. But that night, he took out his mother's old notebook and wrote a final line on the last page. "One dream has been fulfilled, and maybe a new one was just born."